Welcome into episode 13 of Ramie and Drew. I am Ramie Mackloff. That is my co-host, Drew Flaggy. Drew, how are you this evening, my friend?
Fantastic. I'm excited for the Bucks Suns tonight.
Yeah, Bucks Suns tonight. That's a big one. And we're going to talk a lot of Bucks with let's waste no time and just bring in our guest for this evening. You know him from Behind the Bucks, the Pack a Day podcast, and most recently the Green and Growing Pod with my old buddy Steve Sparky Pfeiffer. Pleasure to welcome in Nathan Marzion. Nathan, how are you this afternoon? Are you as excited about Bucks and Suns as Drew and myself are?
Oh yeah, absolutely. 9 p.m. tip, local time, and we consider that a Bucks after dark game. So I'm very excited to stay up all night watching some Bucks basketball, and probably gonna have to take a nap before the game to make sure I'm energetic and ready to watch this whole game. But yeah, I'm very excited for it. It should be a good matchup.
And by the way, I'm going to put this up as soon as we record it. And for those who are listening to it right away, we're doing a live stream as soon as this show is over. Drew and myself and folks are welcome to jump in. Nathan, if you're up for it, you can jump back in if you enjoy your experience here on the Ramie and Drew show. Before we dive deep into the Bucks talk, I wanted to ask you about you real quick, Nathan. First of all, how are you liking working with Steve Sparky Pfeiffer? That's something you and I have in common now, and I would describe it as like great and one of the best experiences in my professional life, and I love him like a brother, but also challenging. Like I'd be lying if I said it wasn't challenging sometimes. It's challenging working with Drew too. What's your experience been like?
Oh yeah, we cuss. Nathan, we cuss. We're not as nice as you guys are.
What's your experience been like working with Sparky so far on Green and Growing?
I love Sparky. He's been awesome, and he's kind of the one that he invited me to do that podcast with him. At the start of last season, so we've been doing it ever since, twice a week. And yeah, he's been awesome. I feel like I've gotten much more comfortable getting into arguments with him and kind of button heads with him a little bit as we've gone on. When I started, I was much more kind of like, okay, I don't want to argue too much, and I would give my takes and stuff, but I wasn't as argumentative. And now I feel like we've started to kind of really get that chemistry where we go at it a little bit, and we'll give our sides, and we'll again butt heads a little bit, but it's been really fun. Like he's a fun guy to do that with.
Yeah, don't let him push you around. Fight back.
Oh, of course not. And I'm always right. I'm always right. So that's the thing he has to remember is like, no, I'm just kidding.
Oh, dude, Sparky's always right. He has the voice that says he's right. He's so much louder.
Well, that's the thing. That's what I learned is I'm like, he talks loud. So when I'm getting into an argument with him, I got to be just as loud, if not louder. So I got to raise my voice a little bit and really challenge him that way. Because otherwise it's like a Stephen A. Smith thing where he just talks over you and he just talks louder than you. And it's like, well, no matter, you're going to always think that he's right, or he's going to look like he's right. It's like, no, the louder guy is not always right.
Stephen A. Pfeiffer. Can I ask you, how did you get 56,000 followers on Twitter? Because that's an impressive number, dude. Like I can give out your Twitter handle. It's at Nathan Marzion, Marzion. But I would imagine most people listening to this already know that and are listening because they know you more than they know me and Drew.
Especially local stand-up comedy does not get you a lot of followers. It actually makes people know who you are and they avoid you.
I have like close to 10,000, and I thought that was cool. But like, was it like one thing that went viral or was it like a gradual build? How did you get this following on Twitter that you have now?
It was very gradual. There were kind of steps along the way, like stuff would happen or the Bucks getting better, Giannis becoming MVP level. And then all of a sudden that championship run really like doubled where I was. I think I was at, 12 or 14 at the start of that championship run. And then at the end of it, I was at like 25. And so that kind of catapulted me a little bit, just the team becoming good and people really starting to just talk about them more and more. And, even people that aren't huge Bucks fans starting to just like want to see Bucks content, which was not the case, every year prior to like 2018. So, the Bucks becoming really good helped. And then ever since then, it's kind of just been a steady, growth to where I am. I don't know exactly how I got to this much. And I vividly remember when I first joined Twitter, like I was 16 years oldish. I just wanted to tweet about like the NBA finals and the Bucks and stuff. And I remember seeing someone that had 1,000 followers, and I was like, holy cow, they have 1,000. Like it was one of my friends, and I was like, he has 1,000 followers. Like that's crazy. And now I'm like, how the heck did I get to this much? Like this is insane. So
I
yeah,
made my Twitter specifically when Yao Ming became a starter in the All-Star game, and he only played 10 games that season. Like I was so angry that like my first tweet was like, "Yo, this is bullshit, right?" Like,
yeah.
I single-handedly tried to start a war with China. Like I was out for them. I was like, "Nah, this ain't gonna fly, guys."
My first tweets were all like during the finals with the Warriors and Cavs, like the first year they played each other, because I was a big Curry fan and I've never been a big LeBron guy. So my first tweets. What'd you say?
I said I like Tikka Masala a lot more than Curry, but
no. So my first tweets were all like hyping up Steph Curry and like, oh, just tweeting about what I was watching in the finals. But it was, and then I've always been such a huge Bucks fan like that. Naturally, kind of just anyone that followed me kind of noticed that was my main thing was the Bucks. But to go along with it, I was a Marquette fan. That a lot, like some people knew me as a Marquette fan that hates the Badgers, which has given me a little bit of, some people hate that, some people, but it's also, I don't know, kind of drawn people to me a little bit because it's like, okay, he's the guy that hates the Badgers and loves Marquette. So like people come to shit on me whenever Marquette loses to the Badgers. And then I'm also a Cubs fan, which again, same thing.
Are. I didn't know that until I was checking out your Twitter profile today, like getting ready for the show today. And this is a safe space. This is a safe space for you, Nathan. I'm also a Cubs fan. And if Drew wants to talk shit, I can just remove him from the studio and it can be the Ramie and Nathan show for a few minutes. So you're in a safe space. How do you feel about, we'll get into the Bucks in just a second. How do you feel about the whole Craig Counsell thing and just the season, in the off season in general, and where our Cubs are at, Nathan? It's not often I have a fellow Cubs fan on the show or in the room with me. So I'm going to revel in this for a second.
No, me too. I mean, every time I kind of always have to keep my Cubs thoughts to myself because I know, like, well, none of my followers, like, that's not my target. That's not the audience. Like, they're all Brewers fans. They don't want to hear that. So I usually have to keep that to myself. I'll tweet about the Cubs a little bit here and there, but I try not to go crazy with it.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, this offseason, wish they would have done a little bit more, maybe been a little bit more aggressive. But I do like the Counsell hire. I'm happy for Craig Counsell. He finally gets to be the manager of a contending team and a good organization. So that's good. I'm just poking. But
I don't disagree. There's not a lie connected. We're a poverty franchise.
No, but for real, I did think they needed a new manager. I think, and I've always liked Counsell as a manager. Even though I've never been a big Brewers fan, but I always was like, okay, Counsell's a good manager. He's a good dude, and I'm happy to see that we got him. And again, wish they would have maybe been a little bit more aggressive. I'm hoping that they keep Bellinger around. That's going to be big. But yeah, I mean, they're going to be pretty good. I don't expect them to be a legitimate World Series contender right away, but I think that they'll be, contending for the division and having a decent shot at the postseason.
But if they have they can also grow a lot of their talent around Counsell. He's good at managing enough guys that if they invest in a guy like Seiya Suzuki and stuff like that, I know things about the Cubs. You can like, that's the guy that everyone is kind of like high on out of like your own system or whatever. So it's like, fine, like just grow around him and throw the money. The Brewers won't throw at their players.
Yeah, they're
longer, and that's the way to do it now.
Yeah, and they always have that unfair advantage a little bit of having more money than a lot of other teams do, and it's like I mean, as much as it helps the Cubs and it makes them, gives them better opportunities to be a contender than other teams. Like I've always just thought that's dumb. I wish baseball was different. I wish it wasn't as unfair as it is. Cause I'm like, I sympathize with the team, with the Brewers fans and those teams that I'm like, if the NBA was like that, I'd be crushed. I'd be like, this sucks because the Bucks have almost no chance to compete with, the Lakers for any type of players. So, I do wish that they had some type of salary cap or some type of, to level the playing field, because it's just, it's frustrating to see, how much Ohtani gets from the Dodgers. And it's like, man, like how does anyone supposed to compete with that? It's just insane.
All right, let's get into the Bucks, and you can hear Nathan on the Green and Growing podcast along with Steve Sparky Pfeiffer over there on the Odyssey app and wherever you get your podcast. Before we get into like any specifics, like the Doc move or anything like that, you come off as a pretty optimistic dude to me when it comes to the Bucks, Nathan. Where are you at? Like, how much has that been tested so far this season. Where are you at with this Bucks team right now?
It certainly has been tested quite a bit. And for me, it's like I've tried to just continuously tell myself that, okay, it is still the regular season. It is still, not even the All-Star break yet. There's still a long ways to go. This team is all about the playoffs. This team is all about trying to get to a point and in April where you're playing close to your best ball. And it's like, even if that takes until March, until April to get to that point, if you get to that point, you're in a good shape no matter what. So it's like, I've tried to just remain patient. I was trying to do the same thing with Adrian Griffin. I never expected them to fire Adrian Griffin. So I was kind of like, well, we might as well just hope it gets better. Try to be patient, give him some time, and try to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And they've definitely shown at times like how good they can play. They've definitely had these moments where you're like, man, they look incredible. And the other night when they played the Mavs and Giannis went crazy and Dame was super efficient, and it's like Chris was hitting timely buckets. You're like, this is what you expected it to look like. This is the vision. This is what it can be. And if they look like this in the playoffs, they can beat anyone. Now, obviously, hasn't been consistent. There's been plenty of times where it's been ugly and it's been just not what people expected. But again, I try to just continuously tell myself, when they traded for Dame, that was a move that they basically said, we're not going to go for the, we're not going to play the safe approach anymore. We're not going to just run it back with Drew and Bud and say, hey, we're going to be good. We're going to win a lot of regular season games, but come playoff time, we're really going to have no idea if we're going to be good enough to win a title, because Bud and Drew had just been for a few years, really struggling in the playoffs. They basically scrapped that and said, no, we're going to go for an approach that, gives you a higher ceiling by getting a superstar level player like Damian Lillard. It might make things rocky at times because you're going to have to adjust to a totally different play style. You're going to have to adjust. Multiple players are going to have to adjust to having slightly different roles. Dame's got a bit of a different role. Chris has a bit of a different role. Even Giannis has a bit of a different role. And so it basically told you that, hey, it's going to take a little bit of time and you're just going to have to hope that it works out at the end and they can hit close to their stride. Because I don't even think they have to hit their full stride. If they can hit close to it, they can beat anyone. Like, they just have that level of talent. They have that level. That top four has been so good this season. And that's the thing too that keeps me optimistic, is I'm like, it's mainly just the bench that needs to be upgraded. It's not like, and that's even with Dame not playing his best. That top four has been awesome when those guys are on the floor together. Even the top five, if you throw in Malik Beasley, like, they've been pretty good together. So I have faith in that main group. Come playoff time, the rotation shortens. That main group will play even more. And it's like, I think they'll just look a little bit better in the playoffs when those guys are on the court more, and if they can make a trade to improve their bench a little bit.
So you used my favorite word actually early on, and it was when Dame was efficient. I love the word efficiency because I hate the word consistency at this point. Everybody, if you shoot 50% from the floor, you're inconsistent because you're making a shot and missing a shot. And that's the thing. Because you're on here, I'm wearing my Chris Middleton jersey because, like, when Ramie asked who should we have on, I said you or Ty Windish were my first two choices. Because you're like the two Twitter handles that I go to that aren't insane right now. Like, I lurk in all the Bucks chats and everything. Like, I look at everyone freaking
He's in
out.
some dark places, Nathan. He's in some dark places when it comes to Bucks chat.
It comes up in therapy. It comes up in
places I won't go, quite frankly. But go ahead, Drew. Sorry.
I mean, I'm like, check this out. This is wild. Like, people hate Dame now. Like, people love Dame. People hate Giannis now because Giannis isn't letting Dame be enough of a Dame that we all saw him do in Portland. Like, it's the craziest takes. And honestly, it's like, I just like talking to people who are like, you know what, let's just wait till April and see what's going on, because we don't need to freak out. And then my number one go-to thing to do is look at somebody when they joined one of these chats, and without fail, they're like, fuck Adrian Griffin, we hate him. Damian Lillard ruined this team. And it's like, oh, May 2021. Cool. Thanks for being here when we were green and red, guys. That was great.
Yeah. Dude, it has gotten to the point where, like, because I've totally noticed that stuff too, where I'm like, man, like, people are, and like you said, I don't want to sound like I'm the only sane one or I'm one of the few sane people, but it's like, I look around on Twitter and I'm like, man, it does feel like so many people are just losing their minds. And I'm like, chill out. Like, and I get frustrated. Like, I get mad when they lose. I'm not like, oh, who cares? But I also have the perspective to say, okay, that was a frustrating loss, but it's not the end of our season. This doesn't mean we're doomed. This doesn't mean everything's falling apart. Like it was just a tough loss. And yeah, to go on there and it's just constant, like it's gotten to the point where when they lose games and I'm frustrated, I almost just like, I'm not going on there. Like I'm not going to go read everyone talking about Damian Lillard trade was awful. And, Chris Middleton should be traded. And yeah, why isn't Giannis giving the ball to Dame more? And why it's just like, holy, like just chill out. And there's so many, like, there's reasons to have patience. This isn't like, they've just got another new coach. It's like, okay, that's another reason to have patience. It's not like we're just making stuff up and saying, just be patient for no reason. It's like, no, there are legitimate reasons that you should give this team time. And Dame has been historically a slow starter. He's talked multiple times about how he's going through a lot of personal stuff and he's had to fight that along with playing in a new team and a new system and acclimating to that. Like there are so many signs that say, be patient with this team, hope it works out at the end. And yet people just continuously, every time they lose a game, it's like this team has no chance at winning a title. They just play, when they played the Jazz on Sunday, I thought they played a great 3 quarters. And then they just had a terrible fourth quarter, second night of a back-to-back that you could tell they just completely ran out of gas. And it was like, man, I honestly was intrigued by what I saw for most of this game. The defense looked better. And it was like, I thought they played pretty well. And I tweeted that, okay, yeah, terrible fourth quarter, but I was intrigued by most of this game. And I thought a lot of people would agree with me because I'm like, they were up for most of this game. They were in control.
No way.
And the first 10 replies are like, how are you being positive? This team cannot win a champ. I'm like, what? Like, it makes me think that I'm insane because I'm like, am I like that biased that I'm thinking they're playing well when they're not? And then I like asked my dad, I did a podcast right away with Sparky. I asked him, I'm like, did you think that this was overall a pretty good game? And he's like, yeah, like they just had a bad fourth quarter, a bad close to the game. They missed shots. Like it's whatever. And I'm like, okay, like I know I'm not totally crazy because some people agree with me. So yeah, it's been, as you said, a dark place on Bucks Twitter many times this season. And yeah, I try not to get too involved in it when they're playing bad because it's just it's unhealthy.
I love it for content and it's great for like just keeping up with memes and everything. And I'm like, all
if
right.
we win the title, it's gonna be so funny to come back to all these people saying, "Oh, trade Dame. Oh, the Dame trade was a disaster."
Are you a bookmarker? I know. Bart Winkler is a big bookmarker. Friend of the show, Bart Winkler. He is like a rabid bookmarker, and then we'll share those to throw it in people's. Are you one of those? Are you one of those guys too?
There are some that I do bookmark. If it's from like a national media account or like a Bleacher Report ESPN that I think is like really, really bad, I'll bookmark it because I usually don't do it for just like people that I'm like, that person's just a troll. Like I'm not gonna come back and give them that satisfaction later of like like coming back at them, like whatever. I'll just leave it. But there are definitely some that I'm like, I have to bookmark this. Like I just have to, just in case this completely shifts and all of a sudden that looks completely stupid.
I've been bookmarking a lot of Kendrick Perkins because I hate Kendrick Perkins.
He's terrible.
I truly think that this is a Kendrick Perkins podcast. We also dip our toes into Jason Tatum slander and a lot of Joel Embiid sucks. We do a lot of that.
Good.
The guy just got out of surgery. The guy's literally recovering from surgery as we record this.
You want to know something?
Joel Embiid?
While they were cutting into his knee, he got 2 free throws, so I don't want to hear it. Okay? I've had enough. I took the over on the surgery, honestly. Point. I'm like, yeah, just going to the line. It's cool.
Yeah.
He'll get to make those up at some point. No, like now I lost my train of thought because I had to start making fun of him again. But like Kendrick Perkins, he has been the one out of breath on ESPN. I will make fun of his weight too because I'm getting back into the gym. He's not. He gets out of breath and he starts talking about how Giannis needs to reduce his role and Dame needs to take over the scene. I'm like, how many James Harden level shots does Dame need to score 30 points? Does he have to shoot 50 a game like James Harden used to have to do on Houston? Like, is that what has to happen? Because like this one guy that I know, he always texts me when the Bucks start losing, and it's always offense needs to run through Dame. I'm like, I'm handing you the clipboard. Tell me what that means to you, because I don't know if you are aware of a podcast called the Sitch and Adams Show. It's more of a political podcast or whatever, but Sitch has a rule. It's called Sitch's Law, and it's always every argument can be boiled down to an argument of definitions, where we're all agreeing on the same thing, but our definitions are different.
Yeah.
So to impose Sitch's Law to this guy, I'm like, tell me what the offense looks like run through Dame, because I see him bringing the ball up quite a bit now, and he's the one directing traffic, telling everybody where to be. And then guys are clearing out, including Giannis, who everyone has just turned into a janitor at this point. Like they're talking about Giannis, who's a 2-time MVP and the Finals MVP, dropped 50, no big deal, on the Suns to close it out. And they're like, yeah, you're Tristan Thompson now. Go clean the boards. Like, that is insane to me.
Yeah.
And I even brought up the stats of like where Giannis sits in the league in all the major categories, including advanced stats. And then I just blacked them all out. And I'm like, guess where he sits and guess where Dame sits. Dame is in the 20s in almost everything. Giannis is 4th in everything. Like, it's crazy. And this guy's like, yeah, but Giannis needs to take a back seat. And I was like, oh God, this is where we're at with fans right now.
Yeah, I completely, like, as you said, I think it's totally a case of, people agree on we're all kind of agreeing on the same thing, but it's different definitions. Like, yeah, Dame should, like, I think everyone agrees for the most part, Dame should be the one bringing the ball up. He should be the one with the ball in his hands at the top of the key more than Giannis. We don't want Giannis to play that point guard role all the time where he's driving into a wall of defenders and that's it. It's like, no, run, screens with Dame and all that stuff. But yeah, like you said, they've been doing that a lot. And what I hate is how people act like, we need the Portland Dame. We need the Dame that can that's putting up 32 points a game. I'm like, Dame literally left Portland because he didn't want to be in that situation anymore where he has to score 30, 35 points a game to win. Like, that's like the whole, like, he didn't want that. Like, that was the reason you took him away from there. That was the reason that he wanted out, is he got sick of having to do that all the time. And like, he wanted to be in a spot where he can average 25, 27 points instead of 30 and be winning and not, and it's like, that's what he's doing. And I know, he still has not been close to his best self, but he's still averaging, 25.7 assists. And if his shooting percentages were just a little bit better, he'd probably be closer to like 27 points, 28 points, and people wouldn't have as much of a problem. So yeah, I think a lot more of the problem is just, okay, Dame's been off, Dame's been not hitting his shots, and it makes people think that he's, not getting the offense run through him, and it's like, no, he is getting a lot of the offense run through him. Now, again, there are times I agree it could run more through him. There are times you want to see them cater it a little bit more to him. But overall, I'm like, I think that they're doing what Dame wanted a team to do, which is not do every single thing through him and not totally wear him out on the offensive end all the time by just having him have the entire offensive responsibility. Like, he came to a place like Milwaukee because he wanted that. He wanted to get out of having to do everything and have 1 or 2 or 3 other guys that he can rely on to say, okay, I can take some possessions off. I can have some possessions where I don't have the ball in my hands and it's okay. That was the whole point. So yeah, I have been frustrated at that stuff as well.
So,
go ahead.
Bring up one thing. Andrew. Because I was thinking about this today, almost like a cross-sport comparison. It's, I know that sports aren't 1-to-1, no matter how you want to do it. But what I was thinking about with Dame is, all the biggest shots that, they were hero ball shots. They were high pressure, high leverage situations, either down or tied, sending teams home, hitting half court shots. Like, he's great under pressure. And it made me think of when Grayson Allen said that he didn't like being way too open. Like, it made him panic. But then, like, Malik Beasley was like, no, I love being open. And he's proven it because of how many open shots he gets. And I started thinking about Dame Lillard because, everyone's like, he's the closer on this team, which he absolutely is. Is he almost like a closer in baseball where sometimes, you may be your closer, like Devin Williams didn't pitch for an entire week. Josh Hader didn't pitch for a whole week because you're either getting blown out constantly or you're blowing teams out and you just don't got to use your closer. So you bring him in for an inning of work and he gives up like 3 runs and his ERA jumps up a whole point. I'm like, is that where Dame is at? Where maybe he's just not used to having guys breathing down his neck as bad with some of these shots he's taken? Because he's taking pretty good shots and he's just flat missing them right now.
Yeah. And again, that is something that I think, like, I've seen so many people take that stuff as a negative where it's like, Dame looks bad. Dame isn't himself, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I almost look at this as a positive of, like, he's taking good shots. He's missing a lot of good shots. He's getting open looks and missing them. And yet they still have had a really, really good offense. They still have been really, really good when their main guys are on the court together. Like, there's a vision for it to be so much better still. And yet they are really good. Like, that, both of those things are true. They're really good and it can be so much better. And it's like, you're not sitting here going, okay, Giannis is having an incredible season, which he is, but you're not going, Giannis having an incredible season. Chris has been amazing all season. Dame's been amazing all season. Brooks been amazing all season. And you're still struggling. Like, no, you're having some struggles, but you've been, you're second in the East, and Dame has been, I mean, he can be 2 times better than he has been just at hitting shots and making his open shots. And again, I trust that he will get there. It's Damian Lillard. Like, you have to at least put the trust in him. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But like, I'm not gonna freak out because of a bad start to this season. So go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I totally know what you're saying. Where it could be a case of that, where he feels that where in Portland he didn't really have a care in the world if he was taking every shot. He didn't care if he was hogging the ball sometimes, because it was like, that's what I got to do. Like, I have to do that. I'm easily the best player on this team, and I think that's definitely played a part where he came here, and it seems like he definitely was trying a little too hard to fit in, which again isn't a bad problem to have. Like, you'd rather have a guy trying too hard to fit in than a guy that doesn't want to fit in. But he was being, there were times he was a little passive. There were times he was just, you could tell he was hesitant. And then, like, if he's shooting, he's not quite as confident. And it's like, he isn't sure if he should be taking this shot. I've seen a couple of times where he almost starts to shoot a shot, and it's like, wait, no, Giannis is rolling. I should pass to Giannis. And it's like, those are the times where I'm like, okay, just be Damian Lillard. Like, you can shoot that shot. Nobody's going to get mad at you for shooting that shot. I don't care if you're 0 for 6. Like, if you shoot that shot, that's still a fine shot. So I totally know what you're saying on that. And I think that kind of just goes along with what I was saying about how he just has needed time to acclimate. He has needed time to get used to not being the far and away best player carrying a team and doing everything for an offense. Like, he did that for, I mean, what was it? 10 years, 9 years? It's like that takes some adjusting to go to a team where you're not that, and to play a second fiddle role compared to what you were doing for 9 years straight. So it just takes time.
And I said, even with everything going on in Dame's life and, having to move and everything after 11 years in Portland, I was like, honestly, I can just see this turning around in the playoffs. The second instinct just has to take over, and he just has to be himself. The last 11 years or 12 years of his career, that's where he's going to be. It's just the tunnel vision is going to set in at the highest level of competition, and he might just be the Iceman now. Like, that's it. Like, yep. I can honestly see that happening, and this being him actually having the inconsistent numbers all year long. And then it's just all of a sudden playoffs take over and he just looks like an MVP. I can fully see that happening.
And he said himself in that interview with Malika Andrews, he was like, I haven't been anywhere near as good as I can be. We haven't been anywhere near as good as we can be, and we're still second in the East. Like, a little bit of improvement, and they're the best team in the conference, and there's room for a lot of improvement when it comes to both the Bucks as a whole, but especially Dame and his individual performance and the role that he can play. How are you feeling about Doc so far? First of all, how did you feel about the hire when they made it and the firing of Adrian Griffin? And I know it's only been 4 games, but how are you feeling about Doc Rivers so far as the head coach of the Bucks?
So that the day that, Adrian Griffin was fired, and then they right away were like, it sounds like Doc Rivers is the leading candidate. I mean, just total shock. Like, again, I said, I never expected them to move on from Adrian Griffin. I never was someone that was saying that, oh, they absolutely shouldn't move on from him. But I was like, I just don't see it happening in his first year. Like, they're going to give him this season. If it doesn't work out in the playoffs, they'll move on. And then all of a sudden, boom, he's fired. And it was like, Doc Rivers, really? Like, I did not like it at first. I was like, the guy that is basically just a different version of Mike Budenholzer, who you got rid of because he couldn't coach in the playoffs. Like, you're basically going to another guy like that. I wasn't a fan of it initially. And then you kind of had to talk yourself into it, because it was kind of like, okay, this is going to happen. Let's try to look at what are some positives he can bring. Because again, that's kind of how I try to be a fan sometimes, is I'm like, sure, if I know something's inevitable, if I know this is happening, why sit there and just be constantly negative about it? Like, let's try to look at some positives. And so I right away was kind of like, okay, well, he's going to bring a level of experience, obviously, that Adrian Griffin didn't have. He'll bring some more stability to the offense, and I mean, to the defense as well, that they just didn't have under Griffin, where they never, on either end of the court, seemed like they knew exactly what they were doing. They never had anything they could kind of hang their hat on. They never looked they just looked very out of sorts on both ends a lot. And even though the offense was good, it didn't look all that good all the time. Like, it was kind of it was a little bit clunky, but they'd find a way to score. Or they'd, okay, Dame or Giannis would make a play. And then, you knew that he would be someone that Giannis, Dame, and those guys respect a little bit more. You right away found out that, okay, those guys kind of lost some respect for Griffin, or just not respect, but I guess confidence in him and what he was bringing to the table, and like confidence he could take this team to a finals, win a finals. And you knew like, okay, like Doc Rivers is at least respected enough that he can do that. So those were like, I right away talked myself into it. And I was like, I think this gives them a higher floor. I think that this will, again, bring them the stability they need. I think they'll not be as bad as often this year for the rest of this year. And then, I don't trust him again. The reason I didn't like it is I'm like, I don't trust him in the playoffs. He's notorious for choking leads. And I don't love that, the whole reason you fired Bud was to get rid of a bad playoff coach, because Bud's a great regular season coach. The whole reason you got rid of him was because of the playoffs. And then you go and hire the guy with like the worst playoff track record in the last 10 years of any coach in the league. So I didn't like that part of it, but I was like, hey, maybe this is the most functional team he's had in a long time. He's dealt with a lot of playoff chokers, a lot of drama on his teams, Joel Embiid, Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, James Harden. Like, it just has not been a great run of players he's had on his teams that have been leading his playoff teams. So I was like, hey, give him a team with Dame, Giannis, Chris. Like, it could look better than it has in the past. So right away, had some confidence. And so far, I know he's only 1-3, but like, and Giannis said it in his post game last game. He's like, they're going to be fine. Like, we are trending in the right direction. You can see that the defense is on a different level. I think over the last like 7 or 8 games, basically since Griffin was fired, I think they're 9th in defensive rating. A lot of those coming against good teams. Like, they played the Pelicans, they played the Cavs twice, they played the Nuggets, they've played some good teams, and they've had a top 10 defensive rating. Offensively, I like a lot of what he's done. I think he's gone a little bit more to that Dame Giannis pick and roll or Dame Brook pick and roll, and giving Dame a little bit more confidence to shoot the shots that he seemed to not want to shoot all the time under Griffin. And again, it's just going to take time. Like, you're going to have to get used to the system he's running. They haven't even had that many practices yet with him. So there's still going to, on both ends, there's going to be so much time needed to really reach their potential. But I do like the direction they're headed, because it was so consistently bad on that defensive end for the whole season. And to have them now have a stretch right away where you're like, okay, they're playing some pretty good defense. Like, they're pretty locked in on that end. They seem like they're bought in more. I really like that. And that's a good sign.
Have you ever gone back and watched just regular season pressers from Doc Rivers when he was with the Sixers?
I've seen clips of him. I haven't watched like full ones though.
I went back, and because at my day job I can like go back and just watch a lot of this stuff or listen to it, and there's more of a sense
of doing that while you're supposed to be working. You don't have anything better to do. You just watching old Doc Rivers pressers.
I'm hands free because Ramie, I'm not trying to form opinions without doing my research here. Yeah. And Doc just seems more at ease in these like pressers. He's only a year older. It's not like this was 20 years ago when he was a fired up guy. He's 1 year older. So Doc has been Doc for the last, whatever, if you want to even say 10 years or something. But like the way he talks about specifically guys he just met, like, Brooke, Dame, Giannis, Chris, he's very complimentary of them. He talks very highly about how coachable they are. And he never brought those things up with, like, when James Harden was struggling. Never brought that up about James Harden. When he Ben Simmons issues, I went back a couple of years on that. Ben Simmons never brought that up. Talked about, the heart and soul that Embiid has. But at a certain time, the passion, it's got to translate to something in big moments and stuff. The way he talks about this team seems much more calm and relaxed. And it seems like he's confident in what these guys can do also in the future, which is really nice. And then one thing that really did stand out to me was after the Dallas game, when they pulled out Giannis and then they pulled out Dame after that, he pulled both of them aside. Like, they were going to their seats and he pulled them aside to just tell them good job, which was just a good coaching move to be like, hey, look, we worked on this yesterday. You guys executed it. Great job. And like, that's a good way to just be a player's coach. And so much of NBA coaching is managing egos and managing personalities. And I think that's a great start to it, is letting those guys know that, you believed in the system I put in here. Thank you for doing that. Go take a rest now. And I thought that was great. I just liked seeing that.
No, 100%. And I think he totally is, you know, I don't know if relieved is the right word, but I think he's a little bit rejuvenated to have a team that doesn't have that type of drama he's been so used to having for all these teams, and having, to deal with everything he's had to deal with the last 10 years of teams he's had to coach. And I think he just, like you said, he's been complimentary to these guys, and he just seems very comfortable here, where he's like, okay, I have some faith in these guys, and I really do like what they're building here, and I like having a team of guys that are going to listen to me, that are going to get along, that are going to, really just try to do their job, and there's not much drama going on. Like, I think he loves having that, and I think he got very tired of having it or of having the drama for so many years, that this is probably a big relief to him to not have to deal with. So yeah.
Yeah, not having to deal with James Harden will put you in a much
Yeah.
better mood. You'll
Yeah.
be much more. Imagine at your job, and I know we can't compare pro sports to your job,
Not a
but imagine at your job you have a James Harden type, and then you get a new job and you have a Giannis and a Dame type.
Yeah.
Just in terms of like the work ethic and the hustle and the dedication and everything else. Like, you're gonna be in a much better mood when you walk through the front door after a day of
absolutely
with Giannis and Dame instead of James Harden. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Strip club, because those strippers, when they see James Harden walk in, they're like, "Fuck yeah, today is my day." They see Giannis walk in, they're like, "Oh man, he's probably DDing."
That's absolutely.
Nathan, you said you kind of talked yourself into Doc Rivers as the head coach of the Bucks. Are we going to have to talk ourselves into Grant Williams in exchange for Bobby Portis before the trade deadline?
Dude, I've been a trade Bobby guy for a while, a lot longer than I think most of Bucks Twitter has, because I know when I was first saying it, like in the off season and stuff, people were completely against me, and it was just a lot of hate for me saying, hey, I think they might have to look at trading Bobby because of his defense, and because I don't know, I just don't trust him in the playoffs. But when I said trade Bobby, I did not have Grant Williams in mind of the guy to replace him. And Grant's been, much worse even than he was last year with the Mavs so far this year. He's, if you're gonna trade Bobby, like for me, again, I do want to trade him, but it's because I think he has enough value that you can get someone that's like legitimately a really good player for him. Not some superstar player, but like a good role player. And it's like, if they just got Grant Williams and a pick or something, or Grant Williams and a little bit more, like that to me, I'm like, okay, that isn't worth it to me. Like, I'd rather have just kept Bobby at that point. And, he gives you that scoring. He's a better shooter than Grant Williams. They've both been bad defenders. People have this idea that Grant Williams is a really good defender because he used to be for like a half a season with the Celtics 2 or 3 years ago. And, he would guard Giannis in the playoffs and like did a decent job against him, a lot of flopping, but did a decent job against him. And people have that in their minds that like, oh, he's a great defender. And it's like, he kind of lost his job last year, started losing his minutes because he wasn't that good of a defender anymore. And this year he hasn't been that good of a defender. You can ask any Mavs fan and they'll tell you that. His shot hasn't been great, hasn't for, a year and a half now. And it's like, okay, like the Mavs just gave the dude 4 years, $54 million, and now they want to trade him. Like, obviously something is not right with him. He's not just this, oh, he's a very good role player. Like, if that was the case, the Mavs would not be trying to trade him right now. And it's also a case of, if you're going to trade Bobby, I at least, unless you're getting a bona fide, really great role player like a Caruso, it'd have to be more players involved, but like a Caruso type of player, you probably need to get a big back. And Grant Williams is not a big. Grant Williams is 6'6", So I'm like, he just is a shorter version, almost a shorter version of Bobby. Now, he's not as bad on defense as Bobby, but he's worse offensively. And it's like, I don't want Bobby, a player that's going to probably give you the impact that Bobby Portis does, but he's shorter than Bobby Portis, so he's not going to rebound as well. Like, and the Bucks need a backup big. The Bucks need some size down low. So that, to me, I do not like that trade. I'm not a Grant Williams guy.
I mean, also there's just the intangibles too of Bobby just being a culture guy.
Yeah,
you got to have it. Why disrupt the locker room with a guy Giannis literally had to fight with in the playoffs for a couple of our stretches, for a guy that he's been through all the wars with? Like, you might as well just keep Bobby just for continuity at that point. And also, when Bobby what he brings you when he's feasting, he's feasting. But like when it looks bad, it's bad on both ends.
Yeah.
Like when he's not scoring, he's not boarding either. Like it's a problem on both ends. Grant Williams, and because I do underdog daily fantasy, it's not sports betting. But Grant Williams is consistently lined at 8.5 points plus rebounds plus assists every night. He is a consistent under. That guy is an easy $50 for me. I love him so much. And I want him to stay the fuck away from my favorite team.
Yeah, and I like what you said about the culture part of it. And I don't value the culture part of it more than I do just the on-court stuff. Like for me, I'm like, I know Bobby's a culture guy, but if you can get a defender, I'd rather just do that. But like you said, at that point, I do know that trading Bobby does disrupt that a little bit. And so I'm like, if you are trading Bobby, it better be for someone that for sure makes you better on the court. Like I don't want to trade Bobby for someone that I'm like, I think they're better, but I'm not sure. Because at that point, you're like, that probably wasn't worth it. Like to get rid of one of the main culture guys for someone you're not even sure is better, that could blow up in your face. Where, so that's why I'm like, I don't want, again, am I sure that Grant Williams makes them better? No. So why would I want to trade a main culture guy for that type of player? I wouldn't want to. I'd rather be trying to use Bobby to get, someone that is like a bona fide defending role player that has proven it for several years and is, that's just what they do, and you can really trust. It's like I don't feel that way about Grant Williams.
Yeah, no, I don't want to move to make a move, and I feel like a lot of people think that you have to be super active, and it's like, I don't know, like I still think the team's good enough as is, maybe without Pat Connaughton. Drives me insane. Like, he lost his minutes to AJ Green right now. Gary Bird there, as they're calling him.
Yeah.
Dude, me and Ramie have talked about the flybys so much. I called him the Pat Connaughton Blue Angel because he's 4th of July. Like that dude, man, when Keontae George got that ball in the corner and you saw Pat's back to him, you saw the 24 looking at him and you're like, oh shit, here it comes. And then Keontae George just showed him the hands. And then here comes Pat just high jumping past him. And Keontae George is like, oh, I can just move. And then hits the 3. And then he did it again on the other end. And I'm like, no, it's not happening again. And it happened. I was like, oh God, like I'm not a guy who ever, like, I've really tried to temper this since I was a teenager to be like that. This guy sucks. I'm getting to the Pat Connaughton sucks stage right now. I am not pumped about him, which makes me really sad. Because 2 years ago, I would have bought a Pat Connaughton jersey.
Oh yeah, he was one of the best guys in that playoff run as far as role play. He was the best role player in that playoffs for the Bucks, and it was like hitting big shots, and that's the only reason that if they keep Pat, I'll have some confidence in him. Is I'm like, in the playoffs, he consistently has turned it on, his shooting. Even last year, like he had a bad stretch toward the end of the year, and everyone was like, Pat should not play anymore. And then in the playoffs, he shot like 47% from 3, albeit only 5 games, but he shot 47% from 3 when it mattered. So that's the only thing giving me some hope for him. But I'm definitely trying to, trade him or explore trades for him if you can, again, get a defender. Because especially now that you see what AJ Green can do, it's like, okay, you can just give AJ Green the Pat Connaughton role, and he might be even better at it than Pat Connaughton at this point. So it's like, okay, trade Pat for a defender, use AJ Green in that role if you need to, and move forward. It's like at some point, these role players that you loved and were great in that playoff run, Bobby Portis, Pat Connaughton, that became so beloved during that playoff run, that doesn't make them immune to ever being moved or ever being in, especially 3 years down the road. Like, okay, that was 3 years ago. We can start to, move past that a little bit and just look at the future and look at what they're giving you right now. And if they're not giving you much right now, like you have to be able to just kind of bite that bullet and say, this guy was great for us, had a great run, helped us a ton, helped us win a title, but it's time to move on. It's time to, let AJ Green take that spot and get someone different in here.
So who do you have did you have something else on that, Drew?
Yeah, I wanted to ask him. So what in your opinion, because it's the bench that we got to upgrade here. What is a kind of player that you would want? Like outside of like everyone, we're always talking about like Dorian Finney-Smith is out there right now. We're talking about DeLon Wright. And then we're talking about DeJounte Murray. Like those are like the 3 targets. Murray's probably the least likely. It sounds like somebody from the Nets is probably going to come here if we make some kind of a trade with our assets. I'm never going to rule out John Horst working some weird magic and finding some numbers somewhere to send somewhere else. like, are there any guys that are kind of like wild card dudes that you would kind of like them to look at from other teams? Because my dude every year that I always want, and I always want Derrick Rose, like as a backup point guard. I don't know that Memphis would do it, and what it would cost would probably be insane, especially because they shut down the Marcus Smart talks. But I'm like, Derrick Rose is only under contract for this year and next year. So, I mean, why not give him a shot at the title here?
Me personally, I'm not a Derrick Rose guy, but I respect the take. I respect that you like him. I I've kind of had my mind on probably like there's like 3 guys that I've been like, okay, I feel like these guys could be realistic targets that they're going after that I don't think I think that they could get these guys. Royce O'Neal, which I think that would be like a pat trade if you could get Royce O'Neal. And on that same team is Dennis Smith Jr., who I think they could easily like throw a guy like that in the deal or add a guy like that in the deal, then the Bucks add in Marzion because Dennis Smith's just a $2 million a year guy. The Nets also have Lonnie Walker. They've got Day'Ron Sharpe, who's a big if they needed to, like if the Bucks were trading Bobby or something and they really needed a big back. And it was like you could get Day'Ron Sharpe as a very cheap, just like the guy just gets rebounds type of big man that you can play for 8 minutes a game or 7 minutes a game, whatever you need. So they have several guys that I like on the Nets. Dennis Smith, as I mentioned, he's been a very good defender and someone that I just think like could just be a backup point guard that, okay, he doesn't need to run a ton of offense. That's the thing too, is people forget that when they made their free agent decisions, they didn't have Damian Lillard. They had Drew Holiday, and you still kind of felt like they need another ball handler. They really need someone because even Drew, you couldn't always rely on him to be a ball handler. That's not really his role. Like that's not meant to be his role. So it was kind of like, okay, we got Campaign who can handle the ball and be an offensive type of player. Well, then you trade for Dame, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, we don't need offense anymore off the bench. We need defense off the bench. And like I guarantee you, if they knew they were getting Damian Lillard, they would have kept Javon Carter, or at least tried much harder to keep Javon Carter and not gone after Campaign, because they would much rather have Javon Carter on this team than Campaign, because Javon just fills a much bigger need. So that's a thing that I think people forget. And that's why I'm like, okay, I'd go after a defensive type of point guard and trade away Campaign, because I don't think Campaign was in their, Damian Lillard plans. So those guys from the Nets, I really like Chris Dunn from the Jazz. And I know that's not a flashy name. I know he's not going to be some huge game changer, but he's another guy that I'm like, he can be a better backup point guard for us that gives you defense, can still run the offense, can still shoot it pretty well. But he's going to just be a much better point of attack defender, and someone that fills the need much better than, Campaign does right now.
Yeah.
Hey, you got anything else, Drew? I was about to let Nathan go. You got something else for this?
Oh, yeah, just because I brought this up to Ramie. Did we have a guest on when I brought this up about just when we started talking trade deadline about how
that was just you and me. And by the way, it's still up. If folks, very relevant. We had a whole trade deadline episode about a week ago. You can go back and check it out. Spotify, YouTube, and now Apple Podcasts. Go ahead, Drew.
And how I brought up for like just tempering expectations of like what we can possibly get. I said you're probably going to get somebody who's really good at one thing, like rebounding, and probably not be a scorer. So again, another guy that, Chicago is kind of looking like they're going to unload bench. I'm like, do we make a stab at Drummond?
I like Andre Drummond.
Just get a big down there that's just going to take up some space, get some boards. Robin hasn't looked miserable like as much as we had early. I'm like, to serve a couple of those extra minutes. If you just got to get 2 guys out there to just bang on some people and take up space, I'm fine with Robin out there. But like, I would feel better about Andre Drummond's hands, honestly. I hate seeing that ball on the bench. Whenever a shot gets missed, that ball is bouncing around everywhere like it's a rock concert. It's great. I don't want to see that anymore. I want somebody to pull that board down.
Yeah, but I do just really quickly want to touch on that. Like you said, with tempering expectations, it's like do I believe that Horace could shock us and somehow trade for Alex Caruso? Yes. Like he's done it before, and it's like I could see them all of a sudden being like, holy cow, they pulled that off. Like they traded Bobby Pat and a little bit more or whatever to get Alex Caruso, or to get I don't know, Bruce Brown, Herb Jones, whatever, like those unrealistic guys that we see right now. But if you're talking about what's most likely going to happen, like my most likely scenario is you're going to get, again, someone like a Royce O'Neal or someone like a Dennis Smith, a Chris Dunn, that it's like you said, they're good at something. They help your team, but it's not going to be this super flashy, DeJounte Murray type of move. I don't think, again, maybe he does trade for DeJounte Murray, but it's not going to be this crazy move. And again, I don't think it needs to be. Like, people are going to look at that and say, oh, this is basically just the same team and they haven't looked that good. So this team can't win a title because they didn't make much change. And it's like, again, the top 4/5 has been really good. If you can get one or two bench guys that can defend a little bit and, make it so that you're not getting killed in those bench minutes, like that can make a pretty big difference. That can, help you keep those leads that you built when the starters were in. When that bench unit comes in, you're all of a sudden holding your own, you're keeping those leads, you're looking better defensively consistently. Like those small changes can still make a pretty big difference and be a difference in whether or not you contend or win a title. So, but like you said, I do want to emphasize that tempering expectations, not going into it expecting that they're going to make a huge splash, while also acknowledging they could, but not going in there expecting that that's going to happen and that they have to do that. Cause I don't think that they have to do that.
That's Nathan Marzion. Am I saying the last name right? I should have asked that at the beginning,
Marzion.
But I've never. Okay, and check him out on the Green and Growing podcast. I've never been accused of being a professional, so that's why I didn't ask at the beginning. And keep fighting with Sparky. Like, just yell louder, interrupt him, just flat out tell him to shut up every once. Like, whatever you got to do. Whatever you got to do to take over, just do it, and don't let him push you around at all. Tell him I said what's up as well.
Just be
we'll do.
Just hit him with the spark.
I got to start doing that, man. I got to start doing that.
Yeah, you just got to shorten his nickname, and then just come at him.
Nathan, really appreciate the time, man. I enjoyed this. Let's do it again.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
There's Nathan Marzion. And again, for folks who, if you're checking this out on, what is today? Monday? Is it Tuesday. Monday? Tuesday? It's Tuesday. That's right. If you're listening to this on Tuesday night, coming up in just a little bit, right after Bucks and Suns, we're doing a live stream, Drew and myself, where we will react to that game. And Drew, what I think could be, I know the Clippers are like the hot team right now, but I mean, you're still talking about Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and Beasley over there. Like, that's a team that, if we're talking about the Bucks getting to the finals, this might be a finals preview tonight, taking on the Phoenix Suns.
The Suns were having a problem. They were having problems for a little bit, a little bit of injuries, a little bit of old legs and stuff out of these guys. And then, of course, people started taking stabs at Kevin Durant, and then he started playing MVP level again. It's like, all you got to do is piss that guy off a little bit.
He's still Kevin Durant.
He starts turning the Durantula all over again. When they had a couple of injury problems here and there. Brad Beal was down for a little bit.
I said Beasley. I meant Beal.
Yeah,
my brain's not working.
Off tonight. He's at 10.5 points. I didn't take that.
Okay.
Money every night, dude. He takes your money. He don't make your money. The lights get turned off on Malik Beasley bets. We don't open the refrigerator when I bet on Malik Beasley. The thing is, like, Las Vegas never dropped them below what they were set at to go to the NBA Finals. Like, even when they had injury problems.
Yeah, that tells you.
Sitting around the 6 or 7 seed at one point, and then they just started climbing right back up. Like, they're a very good team. Grayson Allen's played great for them. Yusuf Nurkic has been relatively healthy, which is nice. He's like a poor man's Brook Lopez. They're all good. Hey, this is the thing I wanted to bring up before when I was talking about Adidas, though. This is why I had to bring this up to you. Because I'm going to start playing basketball again at the gym because, like, my back's feeling a lot better. So getting back into the gym, the best part of, like, getting back into playing basketball, you go shoe shopping. And I'm a loyal Adidas guy. Yeah, dude. You got to get new basketball shoes. You don't wear the old ones.
Okay.
I ordered some Dame 8s, all right? Some Adidas Dame 8s, right?
You don't get nice shoes to actually go and play basketball. I don't wear my Jordans to go hoop.
No, I literally buy basketball shoes to play basketball.
That's stupid.
I'm not stepping in Milwaukee streets with the mud and bodies. Like, I'm not doing that kind of stuff.
When I see people with Jordans, at the gym, I'm like, what the fuck what are you doing?
There's a lot of people that wear, like, Kobe's. A lot of people are wearing Zoom Freaks because they're from Milwaukee. But, like, I mean, I used to use Derrick Rose. I used to use the D0 ones and stuff like that. But here's the thing. Like, I like the way Adidas fits. Like, my favorite shoes were the Harden step back 2s. Those are the best. They don't make those anymore. I can't get them. They're gone.
You had to get this in. You had to tell us what kind of shoe you like. What
Yeah,
type
because
of
I'm
fit
worried
you
I'm
like.
not going to be able to shoot either. Did I spend $130 to not make shots?
No, you did not.
Are these the same Dame shoes that were in Portland? That's what I'm wondering.
I look forward to hearing about your basketball adventures and your
I'm
new
showing
Dame
my-
eights.
On Friday, yeah, I'll show my mixtape, dude.
I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. I also can't wait for the live stream tonight after Bucks and Suns.
I'm going to the bar right after this, so it'll.
Can you be
I'm not
in
doing it
front?
from my car. I'm not going to do it from my car this time.
All right, I was gonna say, can you be in front of like a camera?
Yeah.
With the live stream. All right, that's all I ask. All right.
Yeah, I'll do.
All right, I'll talk to you then. Thanks again to Nathan Marzion. Check out Green and Growing. Follow him on Twitter at Nathan Marzion. And check us out tonight after Bucks and Suns. Please follow, subscribe, like, rate, review, all the things we need you to do for all the algorithms to help you grow this thing. That's Drew Flaggy. I'm Ramie Makhlouf. This is Ramie and Drew. We'll talk to you later tonight.